you want to elaborate on that? Perhaps you could tell us a little bit more about the sort of music that comes out of that, or some of the spirit that comes out of that for you.
I don't know if I should talk about this type of thing.
Yeah. Oh. Was that for Flora? It's not really.
Oh, right.
I will start again.
Okay, with speed.
Okay. The candomblé. Are you rolling? So this sort of speak. The candomblé and the umbanda are African religions that were brought to Brazil during the colonization times on the 1500s by the people that were enslaved, and they came mostly from Angola, Mozambique, Nigeria, and the candomblé is taken in a dialect which is the same language they speak in Nigeria, Yoruba, in Nago as well. Of course, the rhythms are those rhythms based on 6/8 tempos, but they have little variations here and there depending on the entity we are bringing at the time. We have to salute each entity in sequence, one by one, and each one of them have their own particular chants. For instance, last night we recorded a chant for Yemanja. Yemanja, that's the pronunciation in Cuban, in Spanish. In Portuguese, we say Yemanja. Yemanja is an entity that represents the ocean, and she comes in the form of a mermaid, and she's very feminine, and she always holds like a mirror, and she dresses in white and blue, and the chants are very high-pitched, like mermaid, or I say whales, humpback whales have that sound. And there are songs written that are played with rhythms, so the mediums get incorporated by the spirits of Yemanja. Several Yemanjas come down and they dance and sing, and after a while they go and another entity comes. That's how it goes.
That's really lovely, isn't it?
Very nice,
Yeah.
very nice. Can you say one thing
Yeah.
on this roughly right? You asked Flora how she was going to put this stuff together now with vocals and things, but we've got footage of lots of different people playing with each other in different places. It might be interesting if you could explain a little bit about what was actually happening in the studio over this last 3 days. How you were putting people, one person with another person.
Yeah.
Sometimes you were actually laying tracks down. For instance, with Freddie's thing, you actually started with a beat, and then you layered it. And other times you're just all playing together and seeing what would come from it.
Yeah, on Freddie's case, he had specifically written a piece with 3 movements. One of the movements was in a polyrhythmic time signature, polyrhythmic. Excuse my English, no? I've been in America and all over the world, but I am still mixing. But Freddie came with a very elaborated piece with the 3 movements. And the first movement has got a 2 and 3 time signature, real slow. Then the second movement, they call it songo, which is a Afro-Cuban rhythm. And the third movement is called Colombia, which is another Afro-Cuban rhythm based also on a 6/8 tempo. And that was in a specific situation, including the writing parts of it. I have to follow up the schedule. Now, Changuito was also delayed one day because of his visa. So Giovanni was here. Giovanni, who worked with us all the time throughout the year, had put down some rhythms, but he was very sad because we didn't know yet whether Changuito was making or not. While we were doing it, the next day Changuito got through and came. So what happened when you first filmed it was the encounter of 2 people that love each other so much, that transcends everything. None of us could even get into, when they saw each other, they couldn't stop. They were immediately playing on each other's body. And that's the way they say hi to each other. pure love, and we even attempted to separate them for an interview. We couldn't. You had to take them together. And that's pretty much what I wanted in this record, is the feeling of love and peace and understanding and celebration, and even knowing that the whole world is going through lots of trouble right now. We are the people that can change those things. We have to keep our positive thinking, our attitude towards what we do, and be the best that we can be, regardless the barriers and the hurdles we're going to find in front of us. And I feel that the people we invited to be part of this project have the same direction and feeling that me and Airto have.
I'd just like to talk to Flora a bit about her singing technique. I know that you have a classical background in your family, with your father being the first violin at the Rio Symphony Orchestra and your mother being a classical pianist. So there must have been a lot for you to throw off. Well, perhaps there wasn't, but I can imagine with that background that for you to then come to pure vocal singing and to have developed your style and the range of your voice must have been quite a long journey for you.
It was a long journey, and it took me many, many years to make the transition. I was not a real good singer in the beginning of my career because I was very shy, and I didn't want to put out until I met a musician named Hermeto Pascoal, who brought out of me, along with Airto, the very raw part of singing. He would say, why don't you use your voice for sounds opposed to notes? Because the voice is an instrument, and a lot of singers don't have the courage to sound ugly, and ugly is a sound as well. When he said ugly, he meant not a clean sound. And at the beginning, I didn't understand what he meant with that. Much later, when we were doing a record together, he asked me to attempt to do some of those sounds, and I went in not really knowing what I was doing, and I started screaming frantically on top of a very high-tempo arrangement. And after I did that, he came running in, Hermeto, and said, this was great. Can you do it again in another track? We're going to take 2 tracks. And I did it again, still not knowing what I was doing. Years later, as I started to work closer with Airto, he would, we would never go to sleep before 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. This is in New York on the early 70s. He was working with Miles Davis then, and he would take me to the Central Park and tell me, do you hear those sounds? And all I heard was like trucks going, like garbage trucks, and we saw some squirrels from time to time, silence, or you hear a person walking in the park, crossing the park, and he's saying to me, this is music. A dog barking, this is music. So everything that sounds is music. And my whole concept of what music was all about began to change then. And I started to understand better the usage of voice for sounds opposed to just beautiful, pretty melodies. So I started to incorporate both, do the pretty melodies, and then when my solo sections would come, I would get off doing all kinds of weird sounds from the higher range to the lowest I could get.